Hey, it's Anna from The Last Stitch. Let's talk about mistakes. Yes, those mistakes, they sometimes drive me nuts, but it's all part of the learning journey. And when I first started out sewing, I made so many beginner mistakes. And in fact, I made those mistakes so long that I'm not even sure I could label myself as a beginner while still making a lot of these quite fundamental mistakes. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. And mistake number one that I've done so many times, and it took me years to figure out, and it's so simple, it's almost embarrassing to share it, but the mistake that I did was thinking that woven and knits, well, they're pretty much interchangeable, right? So even if the pattern envelope says this is for a stretch knit fabrics, I still thought that, well, I could probably use the woven and pull it off without any alterations of the pattern. So I've ended up with so many tight-fitting, impossible to move around in garments just because I was so stubborn about thinking that I could use a woven fabric for a pattern that was made for knit garments. And I have so many examples of that, and they're all like disastrous. Once I even tried to do like a really tight-fitting wrap top that was made for a jersey in a woven stiff rayon fabric, and I could hardly pull it over my body because it was so tight-fitting. So that was mistake number one, thinking that woven and knit fabrics are pretty much interchangeable. Well, they're not. So this could be perhaps more for us European people that are used to pattern that doesn't have added seam allowance, but my way of thinking was that if a pattern is like in between two sizes, then I could just skip the seam allowance and, well, I will automatically end up with the right fitting garment. Well, good in theory, but very bad in practice. For instance, all the curves, like the arm skirt and the crotch curve, they actually, if you don't add any seam allowance and still stitch, you will actually end up with a bigger curve. So my necklines, my arm openings, my crotch just ended up being bigger instead of more tight-fitting, which was the purpose of this clever hack. So mistake number two, thinking that you can make a garment smaller but just omitting the seam allowance. It doesn't work again. Mistake number three, not altering the patterns despite the fact that I am way shorter than the body type that most pattern company drafts for. And I do know that I'm short, so it's not that, but I sort of didn't really connect the dots in between me being really short and also that I need all the patterns that are drafted for taller people. These two things sort of didn't really gel into my brain. So what happened was that because I'm really short-waisted and my natural waist sits very high up on my body, even for me being a short person, and what happened was that since I didn't alter the waist, I ended up with the smallest, tightest part of the bodice on the widest part, which is my tummy. So if you can imagine my body, it's like this, really quite a small waist and then quite a round tummy. And the difference is about 20 centimeters between my natural waist and my tummy. So you can imagine how tight-fitting the garments. Usually when I made blouses, I couldn't even button up around the tummy because it was supposed to sit at the waist. And another thing that also happened was I got lots of fabrics in the bag because the garment was sort of crawling upwards just to find somewhere that it could actually sit properly. And this is so dumb, I know, but it took me years to figure this out, that I need to alter and I need to especially shorten the upper body on all the patterns that I make. And it's just really simple. I just have to add a couple of folds here and there on a bodice or a dress and it looks great on me. So there were really simple alterations that I just was totally ignorant about for the longest time, but now I always adjust my pattern for my petite frame. Mistake number four, not using interfacing and fusible to stabilize important areas on the garment. Well, go figure. I'm sure all of you don't really need to learn this, but I was forgetful about this, especially in the beginning, even though every sewing book emphasizes how important it is to stabilize areas such as the collar and the cuffs on a shirt or the waistband and a lot of different things like pocket openings. The only thing I did stabilize when I began sewing was the waistband, because that figured it should be stable. It shouldn't just be a piece of soft fabric. But I forgot to stabilize, you know, the collar, and when I did pockets and all kind of openings, I didn't think it was useful. But you know, obviously the end result, well, that didn't look pretty because it was just a wrinkly mess of me not using proper stabilizing inside of these details. So, and that again took me several years to figure out that I do need to stabilize the garments, and that is crucial for the end result. And you know, even when I did shirt plackets, I ignored that little fact, which made me end up with really ugly buttonholes because I didn't have any fabric stabilizing the stitch. So yeah, mistake number 4, thinking that I could do without interfacing and fusibles. Mistake number 5, and this like took me, to be honest, probably 15 years to actually realize, and that is so simple again, but when you're threading your sewing machines, or any machine, whatever it's a serger, cover stitch machine, or your regular sewing machine, you need to thread the machine with a presser foot up. Well, because I was a bit lazy, and I figured because I have to at one point, you know, push the thread through the needle opening, I wouldn't really bother by raising the presser foot, because that would like make it like so much harder. Like, yeah, really much harder having to lift the presser foot and put it down again. So what I did was just thread blah, 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 all the way through, and not realizing that if you do that, you will end up with wonky tension, because you need to release the tension discs by lifting the presser foot, running through the threads to all the plates, and then you can put the presser foot down and thread the needle. So simple, yet it took me over a decade to figure that little detail out, and let me tell you, it makes a huge difference on the end result. So yes, I'm embarrassed to tell you, but yeah, that was another mistake, remembering to lift the presser foot when you're threading the machine. So these were 5 of my beginner mistakes, and now I would love to know, do you also have a few of those beginner mistakes that took a while to figure out? Please share in the comment section so I don't have to feel alone in having such troubles connecting seemingly easy dots when it comes to sewing. And if you haven't already, please subscribe, and also check out my blog, thelaststitch.com, where I've also done a blog post about this topic, how I have done a lot of beginner mistakes. And another topic is also how I have still struggled to learn some very basic sewing things. So you can check those blog posts out. Links will of course be in the description section. And thank you so much for watching. Stitch safe, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye!